Sydney-based publicist Tory Archbold's life seemed from the outside a picture-perfect life, but at home it wasn't anything quite like that. She was stalked and harassed by a former partner for 12 years.
Now, Tory is hoping to help other women through their own difficult situations with her very own platform, Powerful Steps. And Tory joins us now. Welcome to you, Tory. It's great to have you here on Weekend Edition. You already are empowering so many women with your Powerful Steps. And tell us, first of all, about your journey, a bit about the journey.
So my journey started with my values and a foundation to build a global business, which was passion, integrity and delivery. And I was lucky enough that David Jones was my founding client. And off those foundations and the values, the business grew into a global agency and we attracted the world's biggest brands.
Tory, how hard was it to bring this to the surface?
The story, from a personal perspective, was a decision that I didn't take lightly. It was a decision that I spoke about at length with my daughter because I wanted her to also be empowered, because I believe when you're in a family environment and you've kept something like this very close to you, you need to actually be able to both move forward. So last year I was approached by Marie Claire magazine to share a part of my story, which at that point they thought was just about a single mum building a global business, but I thought I had something else to share. And so we made that decision early this year to come out with what actually really happened behind closed doors.
And how have you found the response from the article? It's
been incredible, Janie. I mean, I have had so many direct messages from people all over the world, you know, from CEOs to board directors saying, you know, what you did with brands was inspirational, but the fact that you've actually taken a step forward and shared is the most powerful message that you can actually deliver in this lifetime.
Because it is, you know, it's quite timely, newsworthy, what's happening a lot with women at the moment in particular. And you know, for some people at home perhaps who are afraid to come out and tell their story, what advice would you give to people who perhaps are too afraid? They might feel that their jobs are going to be on the line.
So I say be courageous, be fearless, but most importantly, be yourself. And now with Powerful Steps, we're working with many major corporations and their leadership teams. And a lot of these women are in board positions, they're in director roles. They have these incredible teams that they need to inspire, but their teams are actually going through this as well. So 1 in 4 women in Australia suffer behind the scenes from emotional and psychological abuse. I say to them, to be able to deal with it, you need to create that space. And creating that space is really having a tribe of people around you that can support you. So that comes from the corporations, it comes from the family, and it comes from your friends. What you really need to do is Marie Kondo your life, which is what I did when my appendix burst out of the blue, and I had to make these really courageous decisions with what I was going to do with my life. And I feel like once you make that space, you are able to make those powerful steps forward and become the person that you're meant to be.
And it's hard to make those powerful steps, isn't it? Because it was 12 years. That's a long, long time to be suffering in the nature that you were.
Yeah.
Can you give us an insight and look back on that time? Because there's not a lot of help sometimes, is there? It's sort of once the door's shut, you know, people don't often look in, and sometimes when you look out for help, it's not always there.
So in my situation, it was very much behind the scenes because of the profile of the brands that I was working with, and I was launching all of these big retail brands into Australia, and you know, there was great success for them and there was great success for me, but when I went home I was basically dealing with a personal hell. And for many years I had a lawyer that helped me, and it wasn't until one of my best friends said to me, Tory, you've launched all these brands, why can't you win this court case yourself and step into your power for you and your daughter? So I decided to do that. I said goodbye to the lawyer, and I decided to actually really study the law in my own way and to self-represent. And I was lucky to win full custody of my daughter with a restraining order, which basically created boundaries. And once you have boundaries, you're actually able to have space to be able to then move forward with your life. And there are so many different support systems in Australia that you can lean on, but in my situation, which is the same as many corporate women, you, out of shame, you don't want to come forward and you don't want to seek that help. But I guess I'm living proof that you can do it yourself.
Well, it has in the past been seen as perhaps a weakness if you do come forward, and you know, you are an absolute example of that being the opposite. Tell us some tips, like 5 tips for people who want to step into their power.
Because they prey on... Look, predominantly male, but there are females as well who operate like this, and often it's really gutless, awful behaviour, and it's driven by something where they feel they can get away with doing something, and it's that vulnerability that they prey on.
Yeah, they do. And also, I think, you know, number one is really look at the behavioural patterns. You know, who is that person that's coming and attacking you or intimidating you or harassing you? And I felt that once I learnt their passion, I was able to gently wash it off me. I think that was a big key. And what I did was I reversed it. My daughter was seeing a child psychologist, and one day I said to that child psychologist, I actually want a session with you. And she said, why? And I said, because I want to understand how I deal with that behaviour. And all of a sudden, it switched the thinking and it gave me a sense of freedom. So then I, you know, cleared that pathway. I understood the behavioural patterns. And then the next step that I did was, you know, once again, it was that Marie Kondo effect. It was like, you know, really get your support system in place. And once I had that really tight group of friends, family and professional support in place, I was then able to take bigger strides. And then, you know, once you have that self-belief in yourself and that inner power, I was then able to share my story and not be afraid of it. So I think those are probably my key tips, is like switch your thinking and just do things differently. Everyone's going to give you advice, but it's your gut instinct that's going to get you there.
It sure is, because I feel as well, you know, as you mentioned before, like, you know, 12 years for you to actually, you know, step into your power. But, you know, that whole manipulation, the whole, is it me, is it not, that whole, you know, mind tricks that you play that perhaps somebody else is playing on you, it is really hard. And as you said, having that support network with people that you can trust and that you can actually perhaps tell a psychologist or a close friend that this is what I'm going through, am I going crazy, or what is going on, and trying to work out with your gut, like what's right and what isn't.
And exactly. And I think going forward as parents, it's emboldened on all of us to make sure that we bring our children up with the principles, with the ideas of how to treat people, because a lot of the stuff that we see is just repeat zone. So
That's exactly
someone saw
right.
this to me, someone saw this to me, and this is the way I act.
And it is learnt behaviour, and I think that's a really good point, Tim, because, you know, through this process, my daughter's been empowered, and at her last school there was a situation where she was bullied, and she was bullied based on the values that she held. And it was to do with social media, and it was something that she felt very uncomfortable doing. And she said to me, Mum, I don't want to do this. I don't want to be at this school. I don't want to be around these people. And I thought, you know what? I've done something right here. I have actually brought up a child that's empowered to stand by her values and who is not afraid to say goodbye to a situation, not afraid of what people will think, because she knows that she's better than that. And I think, you know, that's a massive lesson to empower that next generation by what you're doing. And, you know, I like to think that my daughter looks at me as a role model for who she can become.
And it's great with your name, Powerful Steps, because it is what you said, like one step at a time. Once you make one of those changes, then you feel empowered to make that next step.
Yeah, you do. And it opens doors. I mean, you know, the great thing about life is follow that flow. You know, sometimes doors will shut, and that's okay. That's called a challenge. But I like to view things as possibilities. So someone gives me a challenge, I go, well, that's great on that hand, but what about this over here? And I think that's where you really get your power from.
An open mind.
Good on you, Tory.
Yeah.
So many
Thank
people
you.
watching today will take a lot out of that.
I hope
and say hi to your daughter. I know that she's on the sporting field today and you're going to watch. So wish
I'm
her
off
all
to hockey.
wish her all the very best. Channel those great hockey roos from the past. Yeah,
12 hours, but we have to go, Tory Archbold.
Thank you.
Good to talk to Tory.
Quickly, just how can we find more information?
So Powerful Steps, you can follow us on Instagram, or our new website just went live, and we're in a series of talks this week with Peter Baines for the Leadership Series.